This podcast is brought to you by Whisper, the digital communication platform that's changing the game for local governments. Whisper makes it easy to boost community engagement and keep citizens informed through SMS, email, social media, voice messaging, and more, all from the one platform. Better yet, it's easy to use and requires no technical skills. To find out more, head to whisper.com. That's WHISPIR.com.
Coming to you from River Falls, Wisconsin, this is GovLove, a podcast about local government. GovLove is produced by ELGL, the Engaging Local Government Leaders Network. We engage the brightest minds in local government. I'm Ashley Copeland, a local government enthusiast and ELGL board member. Today I'm joined by Scot Simpson, City Administrator for the City of River Falls, Wisconsin. Scott, welcome to GovLove.
Thank you, Ashley. I appreciate it. Glad to have the opportunity to talk today.
Yeah, we're super glad that you're here today. So today we're talking about organizational culture and local government and how the City of River Falls utilized employee engagement to spur engagement and involvement for their staff of over 125 employees. Scott will share a little bit with us about how River Falls has done this and what other local governments can do to learn from their experience as well if they're interested. But first, let's get started with a lightning round. So this is where we kind of ask a couple of fun questions to some of our GovLove guests. So Scott, the first question I have for you is, what is your most controversial non-political opinion?
Budgets and local government are not that important.
Okay. All right. And then for the second one, we've got, if you could only eat one thing for lunch for the rest of 2022, what would you choose?
It would be a Culver's Butter Burger.
Ooh, Culver's is good. I like that one. What's something that your hometown is famous for?
I grew up in Beloit, Wisconsin, home to a lot of different manufacturing companies with a long history, but I think they still have the largest can of chili, which is a big silo at the Hormel chili plant.
Oh, wow. Chili. And then the last question is, who is a famous person that you'd be completely gobsmacked to meet in real life?
Any number of historic baseball players, so Ty Cobb would be one.
Okay, super, super cool. So thanks for sharing that with us. So we'll go ahead and get started with the interview. So tell us a little bit about the City of River Falls for those that may not be familiar with this region or city.
Sure. River Falls is located in Wisconsin, but we're part of the Minneapolis-St. Paul metropolitan area. We are about 25 minutes from downtown St. Paul or 40 minutes to the Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport or Mall of America, for those familiar with that. The community's population of around 16,000. It's a fast-growing community, kind of ex-urban, so we're not necessarily kind of contiguous with the urbanized area quite yet. And we're home to one of the many University of Wisconsin campuses. So we are home to about 6,000 students a year at the University of Wisconsin River Falls. And we also have a campus of the community college system of Wisconsin that's quite active here also. Number of wonderful employers, and we're home to a Class A trout stream that runs right through and along the downtown of the community. So beautiful place, kind of a Mayberry on steroids.
Mayberry on steroids. That's a new one. Okay, awesome. So in regards to the City of River Falls and the staff that you guys have there, I guess what are one of the main factors that kind of motivated you all to kind of start some of these programs and activities to bring employee engagement to the forefront for your staff?
Well, I think service to community is one of the primary drivers of why we thought it was important for employee engagement and building a culture where we're an employer of choice. That is really in large part to it's driven by employees themselves. So we've had a number of cross-departmental teams that worked on a number of different things, one of which was the fun committee, which kind of helped encourage fun, but also togetherness in the workplace, and started bringing ideas about how we could improve the connectedness between and among the employees we had. And then we just kept building culture from there.
Fun committee, that always sounds like fun for staff. So what are some of the things that you guys have done to kind of bring some of that excitement? I mean, from things that have probably come out of the fun committee, like what were some of the larger things that you guys have done to kind of build on that culture?
Well, we're focused on a one city, one team focus. So we do a lot of activities to try to get employees interacting with each other across departmental lines, which we do every day in order to perform our work, but giving them a lot of opportunity to learn about other departments. We have a passport program where you can kind of work your way through different city departments and learn about what they're doing. A lot of social engagement, picnics and potlucks and get-togethers during the year. A lot of volunteer opportunities for employees to engage with each other outside of work time in volunteer activities, sponsoring families at the holidays and doing cleanup work around the community, the backpack program for food delivery to school children during the year. So a lot of those opportunities kind of just get us working together both during the workday and outside the workday.
That's pretty cool, bridging the gap between what you guys do internally as staff, but then also externally as well. Have you guys seen any good success stories come from some of those events and activities since you guys have done a little bit of that engagement?
Well, I think the largest success is just the fact that when we, one of the things I think we can gauge is that employees who are newer to the organization really comment, especially the ones that have worked in other larger organizations, both public and private, the level at which they know and are familiar with employees that don't work in their direct department. I think that's one of the ways we engage it, that we see a lot of interaction. It provides some problem solving and ability for them to work together on problems, and it brings a lot of people. It takes City Hall in quotes out to the other workplaces, and it also you see a lot of employees from other workplaces for operations, utilities, parks, police. You see a lot of those employees in City Hall meeting with employees, and so I think that's part of the success, is just seeing the ability for problems to get solved at their closest level to the service that's being provided. Things like the utility department, instead of calling to say, is the backhoe available for us to use for the trenching of this new service, now it's is somebody from operations available to come out and do that work with us. So that's some of the success that we see, and so it comes in small things like that, and that multiplies across the organization pretty rapidly.
Yeah, that's really cool, because I know a lot of local governments, and previously when I worked in local government, I think that was always a challenge for folks if there are different departments that touch different areas. So like, the police and fire crews may not necessarily have the same schedules as those that work in City Hall or Public Works. So finding that happy medium to kind of meet everyone where they are so that they each have a, way to feel engaged as an employee, that's super awesome. And then as far as, some of these activities and programs that you guys have done, I'm assuming that the program has been around for a good little bit. What are some of the, I guess, like if you could mention like one of the most memorable programs or activities that the group has put together so far? Has there been one that, has just been like a favorite of yours, or maybe the staff in particular?
Well, I think we'd have a number of different favorites among different folks you asked, but specifically, I always appreciate the service recognition luncheon. We just had our luncheon again. We close offices across the city, and we get together for a meal and to recognize service milestones. And I think it's important for us to do that Certainly, there's been a lot of churn in employment across all industries, and so we have a lot of new people coming into the organization constantly. And we put a lot of support and effort onto those new employees, getting them to understand the culture and to help continue to build the culture. But I really enjoy those touching moments with employees who've worked 35 years for the city and they're still very happy about what they're doing, and they're able to get some recognition in front of their peers. And it helps keep us grounded that employees are all at different spots in their careers and in their lives, and we're trying to meet everybody where they're at. So you can kind of look across the room and you can be recognizing somebody for 35 years of service, and at the same time also a whole group of 5 and 10, 15 years, and understand pretty quickly just by looking out at that group that there's a lot of people in a lot of different spots in their lives, and we have a responsibility to meet them where they're at. So that's probably my favorite thing, is really when you kind of physically see that one city, one team all together in one room.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a remarkable thing too for, those employees that have been there for so many years and have had, those years of dedicated service, to be able to give them their moment of spotlight and just thanking them for their service throughout that time. So, with COVID and the pandemic happening. So back in March of 2020, I think that changed a lot of things for certain local government cities, the way that they operate and the way that they do things. So did that have much of an impact on your operations? And then, most and foremost, the employee engagement perspectives, as you guys were kind of building out some of these programs and activities for your staff?
Yeah, I was trying to think back on this a little bit. My daughter competed in the state high school gymnastics meet. I think it was about March 6th. So I have a tradition of, taking some time off around that competition time. So I was off on PTO, and we celebrated with her and went to state and kind of returned on that Monday. And it was pretty apparent, it just felt like things were changing pretty rapidly. So I had an opportunity to huddle with a number of people that I appreciate their perspectives. We had early meeting with the health officer, our executive team. I had a brief call with kind of the neighboring city administrators, and also with a peer group that I'm in. And you could tell that things were changing very rapidly. Minneapolis, St. Paul has a number of Fortune 500 companies, and they were announcing, all kinds of changes to work schedules, or contemplating those things. They were kind of starting to leak out. And so we knew it was an opportunity, I think, right away to try to live our values and figure out, how we were going to provide the critical service to the community, but also be thinking about how we were going to do that in a thoughtful way so that employees could do their job and also support their families, because not only was the world of work changing rapidly, but family dynamics in schools. We're talking about going virtual and all kinds of things. So that's, my memory is those days. It's probably the Thursday and Friday, sometime around that week of the 10th or whatever it was in March. Just knowing that, we had to rapidly adopt kind of the emergency operations center model. And within that model, one of our operational teams was employee support. So we put a whole team together, cross-departmental, and their primary function was to support employees, be in contact with employees, be surveying employees, make sure employees had the technology and other supports they needed to keep doing the service to the community. So that was pretty rapidly put together, and and that was kind of ingrained in my mind.
Wow, I really like that model, having that support system for employees at different levels and areas of the organization. Because, especially going through something is, for some people, traumatic or not traumatic throughout that experience. I mean, it's different. Everything's happening so quickly. So to be able to have folks to help with that from that perspective, that I'm sure that meant a lot to your employees as well throughout that time. So that sounds amazing. All right. So when we talk about employee engagement and the things that you guys have done in the city of River Falls, what are some lessons learned? Like if there are other cities out there that are looking to kind of build a program, or they, they've had thoughts about it and kind of just wanted to put together something formally for their cities, what are some things that you would, I guess, recommend, or some advice or lessons learned throughout this process of creating employee engagement at the local government level?
Sure, I can talk a little bit about what we've done under this guise of how can we evolve our practices and policies and our culture to meet the needs of employees, both their needs and their expectations, and all around this idea that we're going to be an employer of choice and that employees want to be involved in kind of the change that's coming through. So we are, it's more about how might we are getting to yes than any one policy. We're not particularly policy driven, not really even program driven. We're kind of idea driven and in some cases system driven. So we do a lot of asking why not as much as why. So when employees have ideas about flexible hours or how they want to work and what paid time off, how they want to get their job done, we try to say, well, why not to them instead of why do you need to do that, and find a way to get to yes. We built a culture. It's taken a long time. It has to do a lot with a long sustained effort at it, and certainly people before I was part of the organization, have a big credit to that, but it's value centric. So we kind of remind ourselves about what our values are. It's built on trust. We know that we just can't get much done if we don't trust each other. We don't have that many employees to get a lot of work done. So that trust, and then to build that trust, you have to have lots of relationships. So we're trying to connect people on a regular basis. We don't want to be that nameless, faceless bureaucracy. We want to try to, connect people on first name basis to each other within the organization. I think that plays out well outside the organization. We are more informal than formal, so we do a lot of testing and trying things even without, some kind of formal adopted policy. We purposely try to keep the hierarchy a little weak so that employee teams and small groups can test things out. We want to have fun in the workplace. So, fun means it's a place you want to come to. It's not an amusement park, and we certainly are focused on what we have to get done. But you spend a lot of time here or interacting with people in your workplace. So we want to encourage that. Some lessons, I guess, that we learned are this really isn't a choice. Local governments, if they're going to be able to provide the service, which is at the core of all of this, they're going to have to find the right people, retain the right people to keep this going. And the old model just is not going to cut it. So we want to put the time and effort into it because we think it's worth it, both as the right thing to do for our people, but it certainly is going to pay dividends going forward. One lesson is just don't waste an opportunity. Certainly, COVID was seen as a crisis and a bad thing, and I think for a lot of reasons. But we certainly, as far as ramping up our efforts on culture and changes within the culture, we certainly took advantage of of COVID as an opportunity, again, to really emphasize why not. Like, whatever we can do to try to get this service done, let's try to do it. We've been supported, and not all cities have these in place, so I'd kind of do a scan first to see if you have those, because I think it's going to be helpful to get going. The city administrator has very wide HR authority, so that, that really allows a lot of changes, rapid changes in our HR execution. That's not always the case. So cities that have a lot of committee structure or have to go through personnel committees and things, that can certainly be a barrier. We keep the council informed, though, of what's going on so that they understand. We do that through regular updates and one-on-ones. We've had a council very supportive of provide a lot of flexibility and changes and things. And staff are empowered to do so. So when you have that kind of structure in place, then that helps. We also don't, in Wisconsin, have a lot of restraint in terms of collective bargaining. So we're really meeting with employees directly. We have that relationship directly with our employees and are able to implement their ideas pretty rapidly. It's a relatively small organization, so that's helpful with this informal nature. And then, some things to think about going forward is there's certainly, with this informal nature and all the changes, it does provide some inequity or inequality amongst employees. And so we certainly need to work through those issues as they come up, because we're not treating every employee the same. We're trying to meet employees where they are at and try to get them the best tools to do their job, which means it's not the same for every employee. This is not for everyone. It's not super structured, and although we kind of know what path we're on, it's challenging for some employees who kind of want finite policies and things that help guide their decisions more. You certainly have some risks in local government. I know people are concerned about that, of your trust being misused by individual employees. We've not found that to be the case, and certainly good supervision is important too, to work through people and help them. And then there's a lot of consideration in laws that aren't really structured to match up with this. So you still have to be thoughtful of Fair Labor Standards Acts and other things that can impact how flexible you want to be. So those are some points to think about.
All great points and all good advice. So yeah, we look forward to learning, I guess, more about that and seeing that progression as you guys continue to build that. So Scott, I want to thank you so much for joining me for this episode and sharing with our listeners about engagement in the city of River Falls. So this sounds exciting, but I've got one last question for you before we wrap up. So if you could be the GovLove DJ, what song would you pick as your exit music for this episode?
Well, I think an obvious choice is Led Zeppelin's Whole Lotta Love.
Okay. Sounds like a good one. I could agree with that one. So that is awesome. That ends our episode for today. Thanks for coming on and talking with me. GovLove is produced by a rotating cast of ELGL volunteers. And save the date. #ELGL 2022 is coming up in October. This year we're gathering in Phoenix, Arizona on October 13th and 14th. Early bird tickets will go on sale soon, but most importantly, plan on being at the most engaging local government conference of the year. ELGL is the Engaging Local Government Leaders Network. You can reach us at elgl.org/GovLove or on Twitter @GovLovePodcast. Thanks for listening. This has been GovLove, a podcast about local government.